And welcome. This is story number 1 or story number 2, and this happened at Baragwanath Hospital. I don't know if you can see that. Let me just try and put this board correctly. So I spoke in story 1 about dissection. Story number 2, I'll be talking about the X at Baragwanath Hospital. This happened on a Saturday night. A Saturday night at Baragwanath Hospital, we used to call it Bara. It is the largest hospital in the southern hemisphere. That means if you take Brazil, South Africa, and you take Australia, in the entire southern hemisphere, from the equator downwards, Baragwanath Hospital, Bara in Soweto, is the largest hospital in the southern hemisphere. Okay, so that's where we trained. You get the best training in the world because things are happening so fast. We had a rule there. You see one, you do one, you teach one. That means there's no time to teach you. If someone comes in with a stab wound, you must see how your professor is doing it, how he's doing the suture. When you finish, see how he's doing it. The next step victim comes is your job now. You must now suture it. There's no time to mess around. And the next one, you must now teach the junior students. So you got to work very fast, very fast. And on Saturday night at Baragwanath Hospital is called the surgical pit. The surgical pit. One after another. There's fighting, drunken fighting, there's stab wounds, there's shooting, there's bottle fights, there's all sort of things going on a Saturday night surgical. We got no time to play. On the surgical pit, the professors are there, the registrars are there, the students are there, anybody and everybody. We need help. So put up a drip, put up an IC drain in that person's chest, suture that wound. So even if you're a student, you start learning quickly. You start learning quickly, very quickly. And your learning curve goes very, very high. You start learning. You become an expert. You do a POP, plaster of Paris. Okay, that person's got a fractured leg. Okay, you do the POP. You start moving. So there's no time to waste. And in all of this, you have a triage. The nursing sisters, the ones with the 3 bars. You have an enrolled nursing sister, you have the student, and then you have triple bar, the registered nurses. Hey, I'm very scared of the registered nurses. Yo, they know their stuff. So the registered nurse sits there in front. She got this triple bars and she's a big matron. You don't mess around with the matron. She runs the hospital. So the matron, she sits there. She does the triage. The triage is we separate the patients. This one is emergency, is about to die. That one, okay, we can wait an hour. That's one year, all right, you can sit him at the back of the row. Now, we have an OPD department, outpatient department. If you got a flu, you got a cough, you got a cold, you come Monday morning. Monday to Friday, you go to outpatients department. So on this particular evening, it's 8 o'clock at night, at a Saturday night, at Baragwanath Hospital, you got no time to eat. You are busy. And our top professors and the top registrars, they're in the theater. They're doing operations one way. We have to run the casualty. Okay, so there's blood everywhere, there's smell everywhere, there's vomit everywhere, there's urine everywhere. The smell, the sounds, is a cacophony of noise and a cacophony of sounds. And there's no time to mess around. There's people's lives are at stake. There's blood everywhere. You can't now say, I've got to open my textbook. There's no time to waste, okay? So in all this chaos, I just want to try and get this document here quickly. In all this chaos, there's one of this matron, the nursing sister, she's not doing the triage. And this patient comes and she asks him, what's going on? He's got a headache. And she shouts him, why are you coming for a headache on a Saturday night? Headache, you must come Monday morning. Because Saturday night, we are busy. But we said, okay, you sit at the back of the row. So 8 o'clock at night, he's sitting at the back of the row. He's got a headache. So he's sitting there waiting. Meanwhile, we attend to the stab patients, the shooting victims, the people who are coming with car accidents. We attend to them. Finally, it's 1 o'clock in the morning. 5 hours we are working non-stop. We are tired. And then we see this one patient sitting there. Now, meanwhile, as our colleagues, we're developing a bond, a rapport, as what I said in the previous one, in the dissection story, how we develop a bond amongst us doctors. And now we are developing, now it's quiet now in casualty, but just for a short while. If you get quiet for 10 minutes, 20 minutes, you take a breather and you quickly revise your lessons. There's no time to gossip. We quickly revise our lesson because the next day is the exam and we got the mnemonics. We revise the mnemonics, the cranial nerves. Okay, let me just quickly go to, the mnemonic. Now, doctors, we also human beings, but sometimes we have dirty jokes, rude jokes. And to remember the mnemonics for the cranial nerves, you know what it is. I'm not going to say it on live. I'm not going to say it live because it's a family program. Okay. But in any case, it goes what? Mnemonic is a short way to remember difficult words. So the mnemonic for cranial nerves is O, to touch and feel a girl. I won't say anymore. And then it is just as if you are in heaven. Okay, so I won't say what it is. But the 10th cranial nerve I'm talking about is called the Vagus nerve. So OOO stands for, I've got here, olfactory nerve, the optic nerve, the oculomotor nerve, the trochlear nerve, the trigeminal nerve, the abducens nerves, the facial nerve. Then you got the auditory nerve, the glossopharyngeal nerve, and number 10 is the vagus nerve, but we don't say what it's all about, and then spinal accessory nerve and the hypoglossal nerve. So while we're revising this, then I call that patient. I say, you know what, that patient is, and my friends tell me, leave him alone. It's just a headache. Why are you wasting your time? Just rest. I say, you know what, I enjoy talking to people. I love talking to people. I say, let me talk to this fellow. Let me find out why he's got a headache, because I've also got a headache. So I call this fellow. Now it's an interpretation problem, because whether it's a Xhosa or Tsotsi or Zulu, my words are not too, my Afrikaans is not, my local language is not so good. I only know about Khoklela, it's coughing. Or Maruta Wafisa, is your urine burning. Maruta Wafisa. And cough, and say, Futi, do it again. All right. So I ask the nurse, ask him where's the headache. He says he's got a headache. Now I say, okay, now there's a headache. I am now thinking about all my headache studies I've done. Is it a cluster headache? Is it a migraine headache? Is it a frontal headache? Is it a visual headache? Is it a temporal headache? So I'm going, all these things are going through my brain. Okay, let me just do this while I've got 10 minutes free. And we said, ask the nurse, all right, tell him, when did the headache start? Okay, give me the time when it started. Did it start slowly or everything? And she asked him, and the patient said it started at 8 o'clock. Now, I found that very strange. A person doesn't normally remember the time a headache started. Because normally you say, no, my headache was this afternoon or this morning. You don't give a time. And this guy gave a time, 8 o'clock. This is very precise. And I got very curious and asked the nurse, did his headache start exactly at 8 o'clock? Now, I'm thinking, that did he get a clot? Because it's a sudden occurrence. You don't get a sudden, and now I'm getting a bit concerned, I'm curious. I said, okay, let me just find out a bit more. Where's the headache? I said, is it a occipital headache? Maybe something wrong with his eyes. Is it a temporal headache? Is it a parietal headache? Is it a cluster headache? Where's the headache? And she asked him. He said, everywhere. I said, what do you mean? He said, no, his whole head is sore. Now he's sitting with a cap on his head, a big cap. In those days, we used to call it a monkey cappies. In winter, we used to wear the monkey cappies. In today's time, you call it a balaclava. Balaclava, but it was all rolled up, and he's got this big thing sitting on his head. Yeah, a big thing sitting on his head. And I tell the nurse, I say, please, can you tell him to take his hat out? And he must take one finger, because now I'm tired. And I say, take one finger, and he must point with that one finger exactly where the pain is. So she tells him to take his hat off. So he takes this big rag out of his head. Wow! At that point, the casualty went quiet. I just hear, whoa, 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 whoa. You know what was on his head? He had an X in his head. The handle of the X was broken. The chopper, you chop wood. He was sitting with the X in his head. The handle was broken, and he put a cappies on top of his head. Yes, he had a headache, but he had a solid headache. So please, when we saw that chopper in his head, whoa, that casualty, bring the stretcher, get him to X-rays, phone the professor, we have an emergency. And let fly. Everyone was running, take him to theater. A fellow those days we didn't have cell phones, smartphones. We would have taken 1,000 photos on that day. Okay, we would have taken selfies with this guy with the X in his head and all of that. But luckily we didn't have cell phones in those days. But the lesson here is, it was not the nurse's fault. She asked him, what's your problem? He said, I got a headache. Yes, of course. If you have an X in your head, if you have a chopper in your head, obviously you'll have a headache. So the lesson for you and for me, whenever you go see a doctor, please give accurate information, please give correct information, and please give the full information. Don't ever hide anything from your doctor, because the doctor can only help you if you give the full information. And this also happens when you go for psychology or if you go for marriage counseling. Don't hide anything from a marriage counselor or from a psychologist or from a doctor. We take things in confidence. We don't share stories, but it is your duty to tell us everything. So please remember the story of the X in his head, and remember the next time you go see a doctor, tell the full story. And stay well and share your stories. Here's what I told you. I love to hear from you. Tell me what are your stories from medical school or from anywhere else. Maybe you're not a doctor, but you got a nice story to say how your family went to emergency. Maybe they went for a heart attack, or the finger was cut off, or they were cut in the lawn and something went wrong. So tell me any stories about medical issues or trauma issues that you would like to share with me. Stay well and look after yourself.